Hey, Bankless Nation, welcome to another full disclosure episode. This is an occasional episode that David and I do. This is about zkSync today, the first zkEVM that is live, technically live on Ethereum. Just some background on this series, full disclosure, we publish it on YouTube. It's an occasional series where we talk about projects that David and myself are personally supporting as advisors. So these are special projects only. And we're firewalling this from our regular Bankless content because maybe we're a little bit more biased than usual. I mean, there's a reason we took these projects on as advisors. So full disclosure, we have bags in the project that we are about to talk about. We're close to the teams. We think they're going to win. We're very bullish. If you think that this utterly biases our opinion, then stop watching. But you have been warned. Full disclosure. Obviously, we have all of our disclosures listed. There's a link in the show notes. We can find that at the bankless.com/disclosures page for all of the details. David, should we get into this episode?
Yeah, listen, there's, I think, a lot of information that I think the community wants to hear about zkSync. So we're going to go into all of that with Steve Newcomb. Steve, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. Thanks for having me again.
So, Steve, we've had you on the Bankless show before, so people aren't totally new to you, but you still are overall, I think, new to the zkSync world and overall crypto. So who is Steve Newcomb? Can you just give it a little bit of an introduction?
And are you related to Duke Nukem in any way, shape, or form?
I've been called Duke Nukem my whole life, for sure. That has been part of my life, for sure. I've been a 4 times founder. The companies that I've been involved with, I got to see the first email across the chasm on a Nokia phone. I got to see the first, what we call distributed voice recognition system light up. We now call that Siri and Google Voice and Alexa. I was founder of a company called PowerSet, which is now called Microsoft Bing search engine. I got to have on my team at PowerSet Tom Preston Werner and Chris Wanstroth, who later created GitHub. Then created a company called Famous, which is a JavaScript 3D rendering engine. While at that, got to participate in help creating Node.js, one of the largest open source projects in the world. Got to help fund and be on the board of directors of jQuery, which is the largest open source project in the world. Studied crypto for a couple of years, took a couple of years off and just really got into it, and ended up joining Matter Labs as the chief product officer.
Steve, you are deep internet, man.
Yeah.
That's an impressive bio. You've done a lot of things on this thing that we call the internet, right?
Yeah, I mean, ever since I was a little kid, I was like, I just want to be part of history. I don't care if I'm the janitor or the CEO. It doesn't matter to me. I just want to be part of where history is being made.
So how did you find your way to zkSync? Can you tell that story?
Yeah, so when I started to learn the space, I called up Andreessen Horowitz, Lightspeed Ventures, and Sequoia, and I said, hey, can you guys introduce me to the founders of Layer 1 and Layer 2 companies in crypto? And Andreessen really just helped me get into the space and really introduced me around, as well as Lightspeed. Got to meet the founders of everyone from Arbitrum, got to meet Optimism, got to meet, of course, Matter. Really fell in love with the space, and the one company that took my eye for both technology and mission was Matter, and it was perfect fit with me and Alex, the founder here. It's been a very, very, very awesome partnership with Alex and I. It's been amazing.
Yeah, having gotten to know Alex over the years, technically minded, definitely mission driven, ethos minded, but also doesn't really care for the public speaking nearly as much. And so that's kind of where I've seen you really step into and lean into over at zkSync. You are now kind of the public spokesperson for zkSync. Is that a fair description?
Yeah, I'm much more of comfortable in front of a camera and sitting on stage than he is, and it's sort of the good yin and yang of each of us. We both offset each other in a very, very good way. So
I'd like to go into the actual launch of the zkEVM, zkSync, zkEVM on Ethereum, because there's in the world of the layer 2 wars, which Bankless is in the middle of, there's been a lot of confusion with the zkEVM. What is an actual zkEVM? What does it mean for a zkEVM to be live? Who's first? Who's first is always a big question. And so zkSync's claiming to be first because you guys were live on mainnet a few days ago. Can you talk a little bit about what is actually live and kind of the rollout plan, and just really make some clarifying details as to what we got here on mainnet?
Yeah, and the whole first thing, I hope that goes away soon enough. Starkware was the first with a general ZK rollup. We were the first with a EVM compatible rollup, and Polygon, when it launches, will be the first with an EVM equivalent rollup. And that's the way I would characterize the answer to the whole who's first wars.
So multiple people can be first then, Steve.
Yeah, if you add one more
Multiple firsts.
word, I was going to wear a shirt that says, "This is the first ZK rollup T-shirt," you know. And, they're all great projects, and I'm very glad that all of them exist because I think competition is very, very healthy. Where we are is when you go onto mainnet, it's kind of different than when you launch in Web 2. So when you launch in Web 2, your website's live, you're live. You have basically staging and production. But in our world, there's 3 phases once you're on mainnet before you're actually fully in production. So we actually stay away from the word live. I have a ban on the word live, production, launch, anything like that in the company because of the confusion around our mainnet, baby alpha. So we're at baby alpha today, and that means we're doing security checks. We have bounty programs to find bugs, all that sort of stuff. Once we pass all of those gates, then we let all the developers come in and port their apps and build their apps. That's called fair onboarding. And then once we test all that again, finish a full security audit from a tier 1 security provider, we then do a gated release. And so gated release is when I would say we're actually live and in production and in full swing. And so right now we are in we called it baby alpha, and I can't believe it stuck. Alex and I were in a bistro in Paris when we were typing this up, and we said, let's just put baby alpha in here. We'll come up with a real name later.
And you did.
And it was supposed to be staging, and we never changed it. And then our graphic artist just kept it as baby alpha. So I'm like, I guess we're stuck with baby alpha from now on.
Okay, so baby alpha is not a term outside. This is a new term. This is not. Don't go Google searching baby alpha.
No.
Okay, so but okay.
Now
baby alpha is.
Now I want to Google search baby alpha, David. David, you just
I know we were going to create
what
a character, a baby alpha character, but it's really staging. So it should be named fair staging, fair onboarding, and then fair release. By the way, if you hear weird noises, that's my dogs wrestling behind me. And I deeply apologize, but it's my day to take care of them. So yeah, we are here at baby alpha, which is the staging phase, and the response has been just nuts to everybody's excitement for our ZK rollup to get. Everybody wants us to get through and get to the launch, as fast as possible.
Okay, so just to really dive in on the details, baby alpha it's like live on testnet, but only for the zkSync team. Only the team can touch it, and just to make sure that it's polished and well rounded. Is that how it works?
Yep, we're getting all of our security tests and performance tests. We're testing transactions per second, various load tests for that.
Okay.
We're testing the performance of the prover and various load tests for that. And we'll talk about that in a minute, how we're going to make that fully transparent.
Okay, and then so you go through all these load tests. These are live production tests from the zkSync team about their own product to make sure it's all working. Next step comes fair onboarding, which is once we determine that the zkEVM that is good and running and nothing's breaking, then we start to open up the gates towards developers, applications, DeFi apps, NFT stuff. Is that what comes next?
Yeah, so all the companies that said, hey, we want to be your launch projects when you do the gated release, we want to be part of that. We let all of those in simultaneously to begin porting and developing. And a lot of these folks are just taking their testnet projects and just moving them onto mainnet. And then when we do fair release, we let consumers in. We let the users of all those apps begin using those apps all at once. And that's the 3 phases that we're going through right now.
Okay. And then is there a timeline on the next 2 phases? We're already at baby alpha. When does the next 2 phases
When's
come?
the baby grow up?
Yeah, never. So we try not to give dates unless we're 90% sure. But so many people are saying, we don't care. Please give us a date anyway.
Right.
I would say that we expect maybe in the 6 weeks time frame, we'll be ready for fair onboarding, and expect that we will be sharing a lot of news at ETH Denver, including we should have already been gated release, and the launch should have already happened. Now, something security-wise could happen between now and then. We don't know. There's so many things that could happen that could change those dates. But if we generally and broadly go on plan, should be about 6 weeks to apps being able to come in, and then it should be before ETH Denver that we have a full gated release and we let all the projects go.
David, I won't ask Steve this, but when's ETH Denver?
ETH Denver is at the end of February.
End of February.
Yes.
End of February 2023.
Steve, 100. How many launch partners? I think I read somewhere like close to 150. And like when you say launch partners, what is a launch partner, and what types of people are we talking about?
Yeah, I mean, to characterize we've always said there's like been this fire hose of projects coming in to launch with us. And, I went back and looked at the data, and like Arbitrum, Optimism, Polygon, when they launched, they had 2 to 10 partners when they launched. And we have 150 now. And I actually just checked this morning right before we started recording here, and we're at 165. Like, it's big and it's accelerating. And these are the projects that have committed to launching on zkSync 2. Most of these will launch at the gated launch, and then there will be a bunch launching in the following, I would say 3 to 6 months, depending on what their project is doing. And then with all of our VC partners that we have, and all the tie-in that we have into the startup community, we have another 150 partners that are stealth, that are startups that are launching, and they'll be launching with us. But we can't, they're in stealth, so we can't really name them. And we have a public ecosystem page where now people can publicly just go look at those projects, and you just go to ecosystem.zkSync.io, and you can actually see the projects that have signed up. But this includes, if you think of like the who's who in DeFi, the who's who within the ecosystem, this includes Chainlink, SushiSwap, Uniswap, Maker, Aave, Argent, 1inch, Gnosis, Curve, Wintermute, and I just can keep going. It's all and everybody that is working with us. And it's been, I would say our response to this is just truly feeling the weight of responsibility coming onto our shoulders to ship product and ship our mission, and to really be who we said we were going to be as we roll this product out the door, this protocol out the door, and our mission out the door. And it is truly just us trying to make sure that we are providing really, really good service to everybody.
So you said some of the other layer 2s, when they launched, they only launched with like 10, 15, 12 projects. zkSync's launching with 150. Where did that number come from? Is this just because the Ethereum ecosystem has grown and there's just more projects these days? Like, how are the discrepancies between those numbers so big?
I think it's probably both. I do think that there was excitement and demand for all of those projects when they launched. It's the coming of age of crypto. We are growing up, I think, as a community and as an ecosystem. There's more folks here now. There's more projects here now. And this is sort of this virtuous cycle of projects helping each other out to create these network effects. And I think we're going to have escape velocity from day one within our ecosystem as all these projects launch and interact with one another. It's really going to, I think, be a special moment.
So there's two sides of this. There's like the projects that already exist out there, like you named some of them: Chainlink, SushiSwap, Uniswap Maker, like all the darlings that we know and love. But then you also said there's another cohort of stealth projects that I'm guessing if they're stealth projects, then they're like, that's zkSync native, as in they don't exist on other projects, other ecosystems. That's something that they have chosen zkSync to launch primarily with. Is that true?
I don't think that we would ever press anyone to be exclusive to us. So these would be some sort of combo. Maybe they're launching with us first, and maybe they go into other systems as well. But we never force anyone to say like, hey, you can only be us. That would not be within our ethos.
So all these projects, like obviously things like SushiSwap, Uniswap, they already exist. So obviously they're going to deploy on zkSync. We got the stealth ones, which can't get too many details. But we're overall, like the net of all of these 165 different launch partners, like where are they coming from? Where they start?
Yeah. So generally, the places that they're coming from, number one, Ethereum. They're looking for lower gas fees, higher transaction speeds. Second, we're seeing a lot of the projects that were on optimistic rollups. They want to get on the ZK bus, and they want to go to something that they think is the end game for scaling. Then we're seeing folks that are on like a side chain are coming over and saying, "I want to come over to ZK because that has better security." And then we're seeing people coming from Starkware because they don't prefer Cairo. I think, and I've said before, Starkware's technology is amazing, but I'm not sure people responded incredibly well to Cairo. So we're seeing people want to build their projects in Solidity. And those are the four areas that we're seeing people come over in droves. So it's been an amazingly wide variety of projects coming from different places for different reasons.
So one thing I'm curious about, Steve, is like the zkEVM is like the new frontier. It's like the new frontier that like a lot of the layer 2 ecosystems are focused on. Frontiers are dangerous. How do we make sure that like when these applications get deployed that everything is not going to have bugs?
Yeah. As you guys know, like patience is our strategy, and a lot of people want us to move fast. They want us to launch now. And we just aren't going to do that. I think I've said many, many times before, we don't let marketing determine when we launch. We let security determine it. And we have voted internally that we are going to do a full tier 1 security audit through every component in our system before we do a gated release. And then after our gated release...
A tier 1 security audit, is that a technical term? Or like is that an actual term?
So, yeah, I should probably explain a little bit. Like you could, I guess, hire a 16-year-old to give you a security audit and say that you had a security audit.
Right.
Or you could hire someone like OpenZeppelin. And we're announcing our full partnership with OpenZeppelin to try to create a standard on what should be done as a security audit before you allow a full gated release. So we don't have any standards in the layer 2 space of what type of security measures should be taken prior to letting consumers come in and basically use systems and put their money at risk and put things at risk. We want to take and be the gold standard for being the most secure, the most conservative, the most careful in our approach to full launch. So while we have a goal of getting full launch by ETH Denver, that will be gated by our security department. That is who tells us when we are allowed to launch. So we're very proud to be in partnership with OpenZeppelin, and we'll be announcing a second partnership with a second top tier security audit firm later on. And we will be doing 2 full tier 1. And by tier 1, what that means is when you're working with someone like an OpenZeppelin, this is in the many millions of dollars to do a security audit. This is an incredibly serious and detailed thing. These things can take 6 to 9 months each to do these things. We've started a long time ago, and it is an incredibly detailed and thorough process with these third-party security audit companies. So anytime you hear anyone in the ZK space launching, what you want to hear is that they've done at least one full tier 1 security audit prior to going into full release and allowing consumers to use the product. And we hope this becomes a standard in our industry so that we don't have any security breakages as these ZK rollups light up.
Okay, so this doesn't really matter for the onboarding of teams. So all of these like DeFi teams, NFT teams can come to zkSync prior to the completion of a tier 1 audit. It's really when users can gain access to the network. That's when we need to have the tier 1 audit done. If only one out of these 2 tier 1 audits are done, will you still go live post around ETH Denver, or are you guys looking for 2 out of 2?
What we're doing prior to the gated release is an internal security audit, 1 full tier 1 external security audit, and multiple bug bounty programs prior to launching on our first gated release. Then we're bringing in the second tier 1 security audit firm to audit the first one.
Okay.
So that's our plan right now. And we have seen much less than this happen in the past for layer twos, and we hope this becomes the gold standard that everybody copies, so that we benefit each other, and we help each other create this, like, everybody knows this is what you should do before you launch, and so people can gain and have this 10x trust moment happening in crypto.
Are zkEVMs inherently like more have higher surface area for bugs than something like an optimistic rollup, or like where's this, like, I mean, it's super good that we're focusing on security. Should we be, as users, more wary of zkEVMs just because of how new they are?
I think both are complex, and they're just different animals. An optimistic roll-up is a probabilistic game theory engine, and we are mathematical deterministic, very complex math engine. They're just different. They're both complex. They should both have the same security requirements before going live.
Okay. One thing that has gotten into my head lately is like this concept of code reuse is a way to minimize bugs. As in, if everyone's using the same code, got their eyes on the same code, and that same code is deployed over and over and over again, like we can all, if everyone's using the same code base, we can, like, there's the Lindy just grows. So like, I want to turn this conversation to like the open source angle of zkSync, because that's really just where if we get more eyeballs on the code, we can make sure that these things are more bug free. Can you talk about zkSync's open source strategy?
Yeah. Last time I was on Bankless, I had described, like, all of the layer 2 projects have a wide variety of open source strategies and policies. Starkware has a mixture of some open source, some totally not. The end result is they're not forkable. Polygon has chosen to be source visible, but put a copyright on their code, so you cannot fork it. And then I announced what our thinking was on it, while simultaneously saying, I'm not sure we're done this journey to decide what we'll ultimately do. And we had an attempt to solve the problem of, if you fully open source your code, then bad actors could fork you. And they in fact did when we open sourced zkSync 1.0, and all of these pretenders went out and said, hey, we are, the ZK rollup, go with us, but there was bugs in their system, and they didn't know how to fix the bugs because they weren't us. Mm-hmm. And I had presented our latest thinking that we were going to open source, but only after security audits, only after the code was, quote unquote, in the hands of the intended users. And when we watched through the video, we asked ourselves, are we still on this journey to deciding what to do with open source? Or was that the final decision? And as we are getting, I think, the weight of responsibility coming onto our shoulders, and we're saying, look, we need to be on mission when we make our big decisions. And we're seeing that as our ecosystem grows up and comes of age, that there are moments when projects make big decisions that say who they are. Because you can say who you are all you want, but it's your actions that really say who you are. And you guys have known, we've seen these moments recently where the ecosystem had like a cringe reaction to some things that projects were doing. We saw, I think we all had our Aptos moment. We had some spine-tingling moments, I think, when Arbitrum acquired the company that they recently did. I think when Starkware said 50% of their tokens will be insider-owned, Arbitrum said the same thing too. And as we are launching towards mainnet, we have faced a bunch of these fork-in-the-road decisions that really say who we are. And we have a bunch of those we'll talk about today, and open source is front and center. What you decide to do with your open source says a lot about who you are. And we were troubled. We knew that we weren't at the end of the road, and that we needed to think through this, and we needed to make the decision on this that was mission-driven. And there's this thing that happened where I was interviewing a candidate, and they're like, hey, what's your business model? Is it B2B or B2C? And I was like, just my gut reaction to that was, huh? Like, that's not how we think about business models in our world, in this new paradigm. And I said, I think we're an M to C, where M is mission and C is not consumer. It's the citizens of our new network state. And it just, right then, the circuit connected for me. And I was like, I think, and I immediately like stopped the interview, and the candidate was like, am I seeing something here? And I'm like, yeah, you are. I think you're seeing some circuits connecting on our open source policy. And next thing you know, the whole interview just went towards me and him talking about the open source stuff. And it was like a magical moment. Like, and he knows who he is. I guarantee you he's watching, and I guarantee you he's cheering on the other side of this. Cause I was like, man, I think it's happening in my head. And I was like, I need to call Alex. And I went to Alex and I said, Alex, isn't anything other than fully open sourcing your code under MIT functionally centralized censorship of code? Isn't it censorship of ideas? Isn't it censorship of innovation? Why are we so concentrating on the unintended consequences of bad actors? Why don't we focus more on the unintended consequences of good actors? What are all the magical things that happen when you are open source? And if bad actors come, let them come. We'll find other ways of dealing with them. And so Alex, it is rare, but Alex smiles ear to ear, and he's like, this is correct. This is the right thinking for us. And he's like, let's make the change. So I am so happy that today we're able to announce we have a nice, clean, and clear open source policy that we're sharing. And it's very simple.
This is new. This is an announcement.
It's the final stop in our road to understanding what we're doing with open source. It's the action that says who we are, that we're walking the walk. And so today we are announcing that at FAIR onboarding, which is milestone 5, we will be releasing every line of code under MIT, full open source licensing, fully protecting the right to view the code, change the code, and fork the code. And it is such a good feeling to say that that's where we ended up. It was a struggle. It was something where we found out who we were at the end of the day. And we always pride ourselves in really being the most mission-driven project that we can be and focusing on our values. And this is just right on the money for us. We're very proud that this is where we ended up. It was a tough struggle to get there, and couldn't be happier that that's where we're ending up.
Okay, so the current state of things is that code not yet open source because we are in baby alpha, where the zkSync team is stress testing their own zkEVM. Shortly, and I feel like soon, TM, fair onboarding, once that stress test phase is done, like weeks, not months, I think is my gut take, is when we go to fair onboarding, and that is when the zkSync, zkEVM code is like a fully open source at the MIT like license, which I don't really know the details of that, but it's like, from my gut take, it's like the gold standard of open source, and you don't get any more open source than that.
Yeah,
and so
prover,
that's a TLDR.
sequencer, everything. Nothing hiding, no secret sauce holding back. We want the possibility for our prover, our technology, to become a public good if it can. Mm-hmm. And we all know that if everybody adopts our prover, we get something magical. We all get to share technology that could potentially do away with bridges.
Right. And that goes back to the code reuse thing that's like been living in my head. It's like, if everyone's using the same prover, there's composability benefits there, and there's security benefits there. Right.
And the whole notion in Web 2 where you don't give away your secret sauce to your competitors because it might be the demise of your company. Right. In crypto land, we have different quantum math. The math works differently. Right. If you give your most precious thing to the ecosystem, it is what gives you, and I think maybe you coined this phrase, mission armor. I think it proves who you are when you do that. And that's, we want to be, as we are making and having these very, very big events happen to zkSync, we want to let our actions show who we are. And this is an action that says we want people to understand that we really are a mission. We really are not a company trying to make us win. We want Ethereum to win.
Mm-hmm. And this maps on to some content that I've been making lately about just the modularity of layer 2s. And so like I kind of consider the future of layer 2s to like break apart into modules. And like, for example, zkSync's prover might be a module that is open and available to everyone. And if everyone, like all these layer 2s, adopt that little module, then like the zkSync infrastructure becomes like a core component of many, many, many layer 2s. So that's like the bull case for the zkSync prover, for example.
Yes. Very complex to do that, but it can only be done if you open source it to begin with. And that's what we're starting with.
Cool. Love it. Love it. if we're ready to move on to the layer 3 conversation, I think that's where I want to go to next, because that is I think there's like the new table stakes for layer 2s are their own like layer 3 ecosystem. And so if you're not doing layer 3s, like you're kind of no longer at the table. Steve, can you talk about the zkSync's layer 3 ecosystem and where that conversation starts?
So we're launching a proof of concept called Opportunity in Q1 of next year. And layer 3, I'll just describe it incredibly briefly, but that is where instead of a 10x scaling moment, which is what layer 2 is about, and one size fits all blockchain, layer 3 is a star field of 10x moments in scale, in cost reduction, customization, privacy, tokenomics that are available up in layer 3 that are not in layer 2. And it's really sort of think enterprise ready, mainstream ready is another way of looking at layer 3. And amongst the EVM sort of brethren in ZK world, so your Polygon, Scroll, us, we are very, very far ahead of everybody. Starkware has a layer 3, but it's sort of in a different ecosystem than us. And we opened up the possibility to mainstream brands and said, hey, would you guys like to partner with us to be launch partners and help and maybe become part of your own version of Opportunity? And all I can say there is the demand that we are seeing from what I would call kind of crypto native projects in layer 2 is going to be dwarfed by the demand for mainstream brands who are going to be coming into the ecosystem in layer 3. So just as, we are having relationships and partnerships and launch discussions with pretty much every crypto native project, now imagine every consumer brand, every mainstream brand out there that is beginning to think about what their interactions with crypto will be. We are now absorbing that weight on our shoulders for layer 3. And, we are looking at just how many of these layer 3 partnership projects can we handle as a company. And there will be a limit to it, but we are now having active discussions with all of the world's very well-known brands about saying, like, how can they be part of layer 3? And we're really the only ones that are EVM in the EVM brethren that have a layer 3 offering. And so that excitement over our layer 3, it's hard to even imagine, but it dwarfs the excitement over layer 2, even though our layer 2 stuff is just hard for us to sort of like handle already. So once again, like, we are thinking, like, we have such an immense responsibility to speed up everything that makes us more decentralized, more secure, and more of an ecosystem project rather than an individual company. So that's something that we are looking to sort of like figure out how we take on as a company. Sorry, there's my dogs again.
Steve, when you're having these conversations with these brands, right? So it's like in these large companies, I'm curious, like, how you even have a conversation about layer 3. Like, first of all, like, how do you explain it to them? But like, I mean, I'm going back to like, what do these companies barely understand blockchain and the difference between like Ethereum and Bitcoin versus like Tron and Binance Smart Chain, like, or at least that's my impression. Like, maybe there are a few within the company that can hang there and start to think about it. But then you're introducing the concept of not only layer 2, you're like, but also layer 1, layer 2, and now layer 3. How do these conversations go? And maybe you could start by just like, when you're having a conversation with a major brand who wants to have a crypto strategy, how do you define layer 3 to them and begin that conversation?
Yeah, it's almost like we don't use the word layer 3. We just say enterprise ready blockchain.
Okay.
The way they look at it is the way they look at it is they can now customize a blockchain to their own needs. They can have privacy, and they can run their own tokenomics. Whereas in any
they have sovereignty over the chain.
So it's about the features, and you're talking about the features. You're not talking about the tech. You're not saying layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, unless they start asking those questions.
Yeah, when you talk to a crypto native company, you're having a technology discussion. When you're talking to a brand, you are having a product discussion and saying, what can this thing do for me? How does it benefit me? What are its features? And you're having very traditional product discussions. And they understand this is like, oh, okay, this is turned in. They view layer 2 as like proof of concept science project. They view layer 3 as now we have an enterprise ready system, and they're saying, how does this hook into this? How does this hook into that? You know, am I buying this on, is my stuff going on AWS or Google Cloud, or is this going into the ether and things like that? And only in layer 3 can you make, you know, actively wise discussions around that. Everything that's happening in layer 2 with the bigger named brands functionally is a proof of concept. They're just trying something out, but you can only really be enterprise ready and enterprise grade in layer 3.
I guess what part of what I'm wondering too, Steve, is like you're talking about like the features they care about: scalability, sovereignty, ability to launch your own token, set your own monetary policy, all of these things. I imagine that the business development team, say from Tron, for example, or pick your non-Ethereum sidechain, is having that same type of discussion, or like even like a Cosmos chain, for example. It's the same sort of launch your app chain, same sort of discussion. And my impression of the sophistication of some of these companies and brands, maybe you can correct me, is like they don't really know the difference from a security perspective between something that is rooted in the security of Ethereum and something that's not, say, an independent sovereign app chain. And I'm curious if maybe that intuition is wrong. Maybe they're starting to understand that. But like, I'm even wondering like back there. So you have the feature discussion, but here's 20 other app chains having the same sort of features discussion, except you're saying, no, on layer 3, you have the economic security of Ethereum. And like, does that resonate, or how do you even explain the difference between that and typical app chain or side chain?
I'd say 6 months ago, you'd be exactly right. But today, when these large brands call us, they are saying, we have chosen Ethereum. It's the only one we trust. We've made a decision. And we now think that layer 3 is the place that is where we want to talk. So when we are talking to these large brands, the vast majority of them, without us saying anything to them, have said, look, we think it's going to be Ethereum. We think that's the most trustworthy one to work with. And we don't do any selling at all of Ethereum. And then layer 3 is very quickly, there's consensus that I don't think any of the large brands are interested in talking about layer 2. They are all only interested in talking about layer 3 with us. I am shocked at how the sophistication has vastly changed in these companies in the last 6 months. They have hired up crypto teams. They have hired people from crypto that know what they're talking about. I was on a call with a very large brand earlier this week, and I haven't met a brand yet that hasn't watched the Bankless episode where you had me on last time. Not a single brand is not aware of that video. They all refer to it. And they are hiring up teams. Like, I'm not kidding that, like, I talked to a brand where I was expecting to really have to change my language and not use very crypto-specific language. But what happened was the person I was talking to on the other side, which was the head of crypto for a very, very, very large brand, he was going toe-to-toe with me on layer 3. He'd done his own research without me, and I was like, holy mackerel, this guy's on it. I'd say there's about 20 brands in the world right now that have crypto teams that are going to be the people that are showing the other brands how to do it. And there's a change in the wind. They're all just saying it's Ethereum. That's what we're doing. We want to do zk, and we want to do layer 3. And those 3 things are becoming things that are just common in every single meeting that we're in. And they want us to get to layer 3 so much faster than, frankly, we're capable. but they are all wanting to like fund and be part of their own version of opportunity and do their own proof of concepts with their own brand. And me as chief product officer, I'm like interested in making sure that we gather the product requirements. And what I'm finding is we're having some brands push us into areas like privacy. They're like, can we have human specific privacy rather than blockchain specific privacy? Can each human decide whether they want to be private, and then we bifurcate the data on the fly in real time? Or can they choose per transaction which data is private? And so that's where like a ZK Porter gets really sophisticated as we get enterprise ready. So David, I think 6 months ago, you're right. That's exactly where things were. But we've got a gaggle of 10 or 20 big brands that absolutely know what they're doing.
Yeah, and zk Porter, by the way, that's your data availability layer for the zkSync ecosystem. So, I mean, it blows my mind, honestly, that brands are this educated and listening to Bankless. So, hello, Jeff Bezos. We appreciate you listening to Bankless. You guys, this is going to take a lot to pull off still. There's a roadmap ahead. Security audits ain't cheap. You've done a raise recently, $400 million raise, I believe, and that's in a bear market. So I guess private equity is still humming okay, or they believe very deeply in the mission, or some combination of both. What can you tell us about this recent raise, Steve, that people should hear?
Yeah. Going back to those forks in the road where you take actions that show who you are. When Alex brought the team together and we said we're going to go raise money, we're characterizing. We're like, look, we're in a bear market. We want to show who we are. How about we raise an incredibly crazy amount of money, but do it on mission, do it in a way that's us, and do it with partners that believe in. Back then, we kind of gave it the name fair raise. Like, how do we do this almost in a way like when Andreessen and Y Combinator came up with the concept of a safe and made doing bridge loans much more standardized for founders and much more safe for founders to do. And we're like, how can we create like a fair raise model that shows other projects how you can raise a ton of money, but do it in a mission-driven way? And can we get some top-tier VCs to stand behind this and be with us on it? And I couldn't be more prouder to say we've now raised a total of $458 million of mission-driven money. And then how that breaks down is we just raised $200 million with the leadership and partnership that we're so proud of with Blockchain Capital and Dragonfly Capital led the way. And working with Blockchain Capital, they are 100% behind the concept of fair raise. I think they're going to be the leaders in this. I think for folks that want to be mission driven and want to be raising capital from VCs because they need capital in order to build their project, I think Blockchain Capital might come out to be one of the preeminent leaders in this space as a result of the way we raised money with them. But we also had Andreessen Horowitz is another big player in this as well. They were our Series B lead. They also came into this round with the maximum that they were allowed to re-up. And then we have a brand new Tier 1 venture partner that I'm super proud to announce, and that is Lightspeed Venture Partners. And we set out to say, like, how can we have the who's who of Silicon Valley and New York City, but do it in a way that's on mission? And we did raise this money in a very specific pattern that we hope can be the gold standard of how to raise money and still keep your soul, and how to do it with VCs that want you to keep your soul and are also on the mission, same mission that we are on. So the 458 million breaks down like this. It is 200 million in equity coming from Dragonfly and blockchain. It is 200 million that we have in an ecosystem fund that's solely dedicated to ecosystem projects. We cannot use it for ourselves. That comes from BitDAO. We have 50 million that came from our Series B financing, which Andreessen led, and we had 8 million that came prior in a Series A and seed to that. So that's how you get to the full 458 million. Of that, it's 200 million, which is the newest equity raise that we just raised. And couldn't be more proud of that. You guys all remember we had our Aptos moment, and so we're like, we want to be the exact opposite of that. And so I said this on the last show as well. So creating a little bit of separation from the equity raise that we did, the manner in which we did it, we set it up such that if we ever did release a token, we wanted to be able to make our decision about our mission, about any sort of token, if we ever offered one. We wanted to be able to do that where it's under our control, and we could do it in a way that, again, our actions led and showed who we were. So I think the last time I was on your guys' show, I said we are committed to a 1/3, 2/3 distribution, where 1/3 goes to the shareholders of Matter Labs, and 2/3 would go towards supporting the ecosystem.
Are we talking about tokens now? 1/3.
This is the tokenomics that we had committed to. So we said, how can we keep that commitment but raise a ton of money? Is basically what we went after, and we've done it. So we are not announcing a token. What we're announcing is the way we raise the money says if and when we do have a token, we have locked in, no matter what, it's a 1/3, 2/3.
Wow. So
that was a commitment that all investors signed up for. It's like, hey, if you invest in us, 2/3 of the token you don't get.
Yes.
Wow. 2/3 go to the community.
If we have a token, the way the structure works is the shareholders of Matter, which is the founding team and the investors, get 1/3. 2/3 will be distributed to the ecosystem, and we'll define that later. How, if we have a token, we would define that later. But that is locked in stone, and that is one of the foundational cornerstones of what we mean when we say fair raise. Additionally, and equally as important, we have negotiated any of the right to purchase tokens by investors is such that we will be able to transparently show everyone that the lockup provisions avoid all possibility of any massive sell-offs. That is another component of fair raise. So we all know that the greatest fear when someone does have tokenomics is that it's a pump and dump or something like that. If we have a token, it would be incredibly obvious that that is not what we're doing, that everybody here is for the long haul. And so in a bear market, having $458 million and having it in such a way that it can be like in code, guaranteed, mission driven is something that we couldn't be more proud of as a company. And again, we just want to show that we're walking the walk as we go here. And I got to say, the partnership with Blockchain Capital, with Dragonfly, with A16Z, with Lightspeed, it's amazing. And I think it's a moment for all founders looking to potentially figure out how can I have money for my project, but do it in a way where I don't sell my soul. We now have some investors that are on board with a way to do it that we could maybe make the gold standard out of. Maybe fair raise can become a thing, like safe is a thing. And if we can do that for the community, then that's something that we'd be super proud to do.
I do think that 2/3 for the community will be very well received. And Steve, as we draw this to a closure, I got to ask you a kind of a spicy question. So David and I, of course, we love all of our children. We love Ethereum, but we also love all of our layer 2 children because they are moving the dial forward on this whole bankless vision that we've had when we started, which is to make the world more bankless, more self-sovereign people with control over their own decisions and their own money. We haven't been able to help but notice that there's some increasing spiciness between layer 2s. It's a layer 2 on layer 2 kind of attack or spice or a little bit of back and forth. And
kids are all going through puberty together.
David and I, we hate to see the kids fight, but it's part of it. Do you have any comment on this? Is more spice flowing these days? Is this a healthy thing? How do you think layer 2s can kind of be competitive while and drawing out their own advantages without kind of we've seen certain tribes within crypto get toxic, let's just say, and get overly tribal. How do we avoid the worst outcomes of this while still fighting for the best and fighting and being competitive?
I think that from our perspective and how we see it is I get excited when I see other projects succeed. Like when Arbitrum got Nitro launched and they got a 7x bump, I sent a note to each of the founders congratulating them. And I was like, guys, killer. Like, this is awesome. When I see like Starkware, like building its tech and I see them like getting into layer 3 and doing amazing things there, like I get excited personally. The spiciness is on Twitter. And I kind of view it as it's kind of enjoyable to watch because I personally, anyone can read my Twitter account. I don't participate in the spiciness at all. I'm very focused on getting our product and our mission out the door. And, we have events like Steven, over at Arbitrum, Mr. Spicy Pants.
See, that right there, Steve, that's spicy though. You didn't do it on Twitter, but you did it right now. Mr. Spicy Pants?
Okay. That's a good-natured, little jab at him. Like, he tweets like, you guys don't have an end-to-end prover in testnet, and you guys are being misleading to your audience. And so I just texted and I'm like, Steven, like we had coffee and talked about this. I urge you to read our public roadmap. And your tweet is going to be very unfortunately timed because you tweeted it the day before we're releasing our public end-to-end prover on testnet, just as our roadmap said we would. And he congratulated me, because we have a relationship and we're friendly. But then his tweet was like, those guys are the devils, they're misleading you and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, all right, if he wants to be a shade thrower on Twitter, that's his choice, and he's welcome to do so. I will only say positive things ever about Arbitrum. I think that their engineering and their technical team, I think Hunter on their community team is amazing. And if he wants to throw shade at me, I'm going to do nothing but throw love back. And the worst I'll ever get is call him Mr. Spicy Pants.
Ryan, you don't go to the crypto conferences, so you don't have the luxury of hanging out with these people behind the stage. Because Mazzari Mainnet, it was Steve Mahalo from Polygon, Steven from Arbitrum, and all these people like hang out behind the stage and like chat, and everyone's got a smirk. Everyone's got a smirk on their face, but everyone's also super friendly behind the stage too.
Yeah, but at the same time, like here, at the same time, Mahalo comes and I was wearing one of these.
What's
and he's
that?
like, can I get, this is Zeke, our dev cat. This is our little dude.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And he's like, can I get one of those for my daughter? That's so cool. Like that.
Wait, I want one of those.
Off stage. And then this one, I'm switching to this hat soon.
Oh my God. I didn't know zkSync had a mascot.
We accidentally created one for SmartCon and it just took off. So it's with us now. It's part of history. Zeke the dev cat.
Is there a difference between Spice, like when it's layer 2 to layer 2 versus like layer 2 to alternative layer 1, or is there also some friendliness there?
I mean, Luigi was on that panel too, and he and I have caught up, and now we're getting to know each other offline too. I think that most of the spiciness is just when marketing teams inadvertently use the word like launch or live or in production, and then Steven's like, that is spicy inaccurate.
It's a semantics fight.
It is, and we now have training sessions like with our marketing team to be like, hey, when we're talking about milestone 4 and 5, please don't use the word production or live or launch or Ethereum, because Mr. Spicy Pants is going to get upset. And so I enjoy it. It's like watching, the comedy news of everybody going back and forth. I don't personally participate in it. I think it is valid to critique each of us and say, hey, you guys just made a claim that's not accurate. I think it's like to say, like Polygon's marketing team says they're open source. But if you look at their code, they're only source visible and they're copyright protected. It's okay to say that. I don't think it's okay to say Polygon is evil because they messed that up in their marketing. That's not appropriate. And so I'm happy to receive the criticism. Like when we did 100 days to mainnet, I personally wouldn't have done that again. I think it gave people the impression we were launching live. We didn't think that when we created the program, but afterwards, we're like, yeah, I can absolutely 100 million% see how people thought that meant we were doing the gated release, on October 28th. And I think it's a valid criticism to say, hey, guys, you should have done 100 days to your gated release, not to baby alpha. That would have been more informed. But it's not okay to say there were evil people because, we said 100 days to mainnet. So I hope that he takes off his spicy pants and stays friends with us. I would certainly welcome him onto the ZK bus if he ever wanted to come on it. I think he might be the last bastion of optimistic roll-ups. Who knows? But we would welcome him into the fold if he ever did want to come in. And I consider him a compatriot and a fellow inventor, that is trying to make the world a better place. And if he wants to get spicy on Twitter, he's welcome. And I will never respond back with any spiciness from me.
Well, I can't say stop doing it because it is somewhat entertaining, but I'm glad you guys are not descending into toxicity because that would be unhealthy for the space. And at the end of the day, we are all here to build a more free, more self-sovereign world. So, Steve, this has been a pleasure. Thank you for spending some time with us on this full disclosure episode. I'm going to close it out here. Risks and disclaimers. Of course, everyone, crypto is risky. So is Ethereum. So is the frontier of layer twos, as is DeFi. You could lose what you put in. We are headed west. This is the frontier. It's not for everyone, but we're glad you're with us on the Bankless journey. Thanks a lot.